The Journey of Odysseus, 10 Years of Wandering and Human Lessons. Part 1. From the hero who conquered Troy to the brutal who angered the god of the sea. After helping the Greeks defeat Troy with his clever wooden horse plan, Odysseus, king of Ithaca, was hailed as a great hero. But when everyone else returned home, his journey had only just begun. On the way across the sea, Odysseus and his crew got lost on a deserted island, inhabited by Polyphemus, a giant one-eyed Cyclops, son of the sea god Poseidon. At first, Odysseus just wanted to find some food and fresh water. But greed and complacency led him and his men into Polyphemus' cave, unaware that it was a deadly trap. When the Cyclops returned and discovered the strangers, he did not welcome them. He imprisoned them and ate them alive, like a wild animal unbound by divine or human laws. Odysseus could not fight directly because the cave entrance was blocked by a large rock, and even if they killed the Cyclops, they would not be able to escape. So he devised a dangerous plan. He gave Polyphemus strong wine, making him drunk. When the Cyclops asked for his name, Odysseus lied and said his name was Nobody. When he fell asleep, he and the survivors heated a large, sharp stick and stabbed it straight into the man's only eye, causing him to painfully go blind. The next morning, Odysseus's party hid under the bellies of sheep to escape from the cave when Polyphemus opened the door. On the ship, instead of keeping quiet, Odysseus arrogantly stated his real name and boasted of his exploits. An act of arrogance, but that was also the beginning of a tragedy of 10 years of being exiled by Poseidon. For insulting and blinding his son, the sea god Poseidon vowed that Odysseus would never return home in peace. And so, the sea became angry and stormy from then on, the beginning of a 10-year wandering journey. Part 2, 10 Years on the Sea, the War Between Human Will and Divine Power. After blinding Polyphemus, son of Poseidon, Odysseus cursed himself. The seas were no longer peaceful. Poseidon, with the anger of an offended god, caused the waves to rise incessantly, tossing the ship of the king of Ithaca from place to place, unable to find its way home. Island of the Forgetful Flower-Eaters, Lotus-Eaters. The first place they landed was a peaceful island where the inhabitants lived by eating strange lotus flowers, a plant that caused anyone who ate it to fall into a state of forgetfulness, losing their memories, their purpose in life, and their will to return home. Many sailors ate it, and were so foolish that they did not want to leave. Odysseus had to drag them onto the ship by force, tying them up to keep them conscious until they set sail. That's the first lesson: danger doesn't always come from monsters, but sometimes lies in the peacefulness that disorients people. The massacre of the giant tribe Laestrygonians. Soon after, they reached a strange land, a place that at first seemed friendly. But it was the land of giant cannibals, the Laestrygonians. When the ship dropped anchor, the villagers came, grabbed each person, threw stones to crush the ship, and picked up the sailors to eat them alive. Odysseus' ship, fortunately not deep in the harbor, was the only one to escape, but all his friends, brothers, died. The witch circle and the test of human hearts. They continued to the island of Aiaa, where the witch Circe lived. Initially, she turned Odysseus' crew into pigs, locked in a pen, fat and waiting to be slaughtered. But the god Hermes came and gave Odysseus an anti-magic herb, which helped him control Circe. After that, she changed her attitude, welcomed him warmly, and saved her friends. And then, Odysseus was stuck there for a year, living in luxury, forgetting the way home, until his crew begged him to continue his journey. Once again, the challenge came not from swords or monsters, but from temptation and his own weakness. Journey into the afterlife, meeting the prophet Tiresias. To find his way back, Odysseus must go to the end of the world, entering the underworld to consult the spirit of the prophet Tiresias. There, he met his mother's shadow, who died because she missed her son so much, and also warriors like Achilles, Agamemnon. Each soul is a tragedy. Some died in battle, some were betrayed, some died alone. Tiresias reveals, Odysseus can return, but he must not offend Helios, must not steal the sacred cow, and must learn to control his pride if he wants to survive. The enchanting song of sirens. Upon returning by sea, they had to pass through the waters of the sirens, beautiful creatures whose enchanting voices were so irresistible that anyone who heard them would go mad and hurl themselves into the sea. Odysseus ordered his sailors to plug their ears with wax, while he had himself tied to the mast, so he could enjoy the siren's song without being able to jump into the sea. He became the first person in history to survive after hearing the siren's voices, thanks to his intellect and self-control. Scylla and Charybdis, a choice of sacrifice. The journey forced him to pass through two simultaneous dangers. On one side was Charybdis, a giant whirlpool capable of swallowing the entire ship. On the other side was Scylla, a six-headed man-eating monster. Unable to avoid both, Odysseus chose to sacrifice a few men, steering the ship close to Scylla to avoid being sucked into Charybdis, a bloody decision, but one made for survival. The island of Helios, and the price of disobedience. They arrived at the island of Thrinacia, where the sun god Helios kept his sacred cattle. Despite Odysseus's strict warnings not to touch them, the crew, driven by hunger when supplies ran out, rebelled and slaughtered the cattle for food. Immediately after, Zeus struck down the entire ship with a thunderbolt. Everyone perished, and only Odysseus survived, drifting to the island of the nymph Calypso. And so, after so many years drifting amidst tempests, among enchanting islands and monsters lurking in the shadows, Odysseus, our hero, finally washed ashore upon his homeland, the place his heart had always longed for. But Ithaca was no longer the peaceful haven it once was. That place, his kingdom, had been torn apart by greedy and tyrannical suitors. His faithful wife, Penelope, was enduring a daily struggle, caught between fragile hope and the relentless pressure from powerful forces. His son, Telemachus, had been swept into a whirlwind of political turmoil, lacking the strength to resist. Odysseus had conquered the seas, but his final, and most brutal, trial was awaiting him right within the walls of his own home. Can a man, exhausted by time and fate, still rise like a storm to reclaim his glory, his honor, and his family? How will Odysseus choose to exact his revenge, and is there still a way back for someone who has been estranged from his own humanity for so long? Join me in the next video, Odysseus Returns, The Bloody Revenge and the Final Warning. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss the most tragic and epic finale of this great journey.